You found yourself on another episode of Locked On Bulls. Zach LaVine Zach LaVine trade is a focal point of the organization this offseason. That's according to Casey Johnson. Me and Pat are going to break that down. Also, we're going to take a look at changes in the coaching staff that came down, surprisingly enough, only less than a week after AK said changes are coming. And was Coby White robbed of the most improved player of the year? Me and Pat are going to discuss it all and more right after this.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Bulls. We are a member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. That's Pat the Designer, host and creator of the Windy City Breeze and host of the Chicago Bears podcast over at ESPN 1000. I'm Haize, host and creator of Chicago. Huh? You all right there? You pulled something? You're a little old there,
No,
bro.
no. I've had a crick in my neck all day, but I had took Advil, and it just reminded me that it's still there right now.
That'll do it. I'm host and creator of Chicago Bulls and Chicago Bears Central YouTube pages and podcasts. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150. Win or lose, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, Pat, let's get into it, man. So Casey Johnson was on the NBC Bulls Talk podcast, and he made a very simple statement. And he said that moving Zach LaVine this offseason is a organizational focal point.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very unique choice of words to describe that, but I think that means that the Bulls maybe offseason begins with looking for Zach LaVine trades. Now, Casey Johnson did also add into that it does not mean that a trade is going to happen, but it is the focus of the front office to try to find that Zach LaVine trade. How you feel about that, Pat?
Well, I mean, listen, just like Meg Thee Stallion's cameraman, sometimes you got to zoom out and try and look at this whole thing in a bigger picture. I think realistically speaking, Zach LaVine being here at the start of the season is a real possibility, because there's going to be people that still are looking at that contract, still looking at the injury history, are looking at the play when he was on the court last season. That's the thing a lot of people have forgotten about. Zach LaVine was bad on the court last season. There were games where it was there's the guy that we remember and that we would really enjoy having on our team. Right, the 50-point Detroit game, there were moments, but for the most part, we saw a lot of bad out of Zach LaVine last season. And so I think that you really have to zoom out and say, okay, what's the real chance that something like this gets done over the offseason right away before the season gets here? And I don't think it's a very high chance right now, because I think there's so many question marks on Zach LaVine. I think that this may be a focal point for the team, but both sides of this team may have to just come together and have the realization, that I got to rephrase how I said that. They may have to come together and have the realization that there may not be an end to this marriage that is in sight, because nobody wants to get involved in the marriage. There's no side chicks in this. You're dealing with two ugly people that are trying to separate, and nobody wants them.
Well, I mean, it's like two side people dating each other. But I think
that would mean that somebody wants you at home, but y'all both side people dating. These are two people in a relationship.
Go back home.
Hey, these are two people in a relationship trying their hardest to cheat, and nobody wants to cheat with them.
Well, no, here's the thing. Well, I look at it this way: is that it makes sense when you look at the Bulls. And we talked about the Bulls' salary cap situation yesterday, right? Is that moving Zach LaVine alleviates a lot of that, depending on what you get back. So, if you're looking at it, I think the Bulls are going to hope that one of the teams with cap space, not that they can absorb all of Zach LaVine's salary, but they can absorb maybe a nice portion of it, to where it frees them up to maybe use the mid-level exception while also adding a couple of depth pieces. And one team that we know that, and I think with the way that they made a trade at the deadline, I do think that Zach LaVine Detroit deal probably would have went down if it wasn't for Zach LaVine's injury. Detroit does have $60 million in cap space this upcoming year. And I don't know what they have as far as extensions that are pending. That's before any extensions or anything like that. But even if, let's say, $40 million is taken up of that, if you can trade Zach LaVine's $43 million into Detroit still having $20 million in cap space, so they only basically have to match half of Zach LaVine's contract. That's a very feasible deal. No free agents are going to go to Detroit, so that's something out there. There's something out there. Go ahead.
I was going to say Detroit's the perfect name because of what you said. No free agents are going there, and whether you believe in the young pieces or not, you're only going to be able to get young pieces back. That's all that they have to give.
Yeah, so maybe revisit that Jaden Ivey situation. And then you look at the Philadelphia 76ers, they have $56 million in cap space. Now, the thing with 76ers are we know they're going to go star hunting, much like the Bulls are going to actually have the cap space to go after Paul George. They're probably even going to look at some of because they're going to try to put a team around Joel Embiid to make sure that Joel Embiid does not ask for a trade. If they do strike out, I could completely see the Philadelphia 76ers pivoting to Zach LaVine. So I'm not Zach LaVine isn't going to necessarily be the set out to be the offseason prize for anyone, but I do think that there are some teams, especially depending on how things may fizzle out in the playoffs for some of these teams, that they could look to maybe pivot and add a Zach LaVine with cap space. The Orlando Magic, another team, for example, $18 million in true cap space this upcoming year. Something could be done there. So I think there's some options for the Bulls. It just depends on, of course, you never know for sure, but much like, for example, Boston. Look at the deal that Boston made this past offseason to bring in Kristaps Porzingis and things like that. Like, people didn't really expect them to do that, but because of how they fizzled out in the playoffs and the Miami Heat beat them, it kind of changes some things with the organization. So maybe the Bulls are hoping for some magic that way a little bit.
See, I think what's tough about that scenario for me is that Zach LaVine would have been the consolation prize this year, and people didn't want to make a move for him.
True, but that's in the middle of the season. A lot of things change at the end of the season after you've gotten your butt kicked in the playoffs a little bit. Because
I mean, listen, if that's the case, maybe we can get another white guy out of the Lakers here, because Austin Reeves is absolutely not shown up in the slightest in this playoff series.
You got to think. Look at all the players that the Lakers turned down because they just didn't want to include Austin Reeves, bro.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that he can't have a bounce back year, right? Like we look at Io, he's coming back from a down year, right? So he can. But if I'm the brass at the Lakers, I'm definitely looking at it and saying, I don't know if he's going to be untouchable this offseason like he was this past one.
And the tough part is, right, you may never get those offers again. We know that here with dealing with the Zach LaVine situation. I mean, my God, where would this Bulls team be if AK pulled the trigger on the reported Knicks offer that was on the table? Like, he'd be a god right now. A decision like that, we'd be like, oh, AK's a genius. He fleeced the Knicks. Like, now, realistically speaking, Tom Thibodeau probably could have fixed Zach LaVine. I think one thing we do know about Thibs is going to be able to put you in a very successful situation, no matter what team you give him.
Play or die.
Win or die. But I do think that when you look at some of the teams that are available, I do think playoffs play into that. Yeah. I think Miami absolutely plays into that because of, they didn't want to go with Zach LaVine. They end up going with a Terry Rozier type of player. Terry Rozier ended up hurt. I think that's the other part, though, that we have to have the conversation on with Zach LaVine that makes this very tough. It's not just the money. It's not just the it's not just the downplay that he had this season. It's the fact that if you start looking through, at least since Billy Donovan has been here, Zach LaVine's been hurt for much of that tenure. Now he's played through some of the injuries, which commendable. I love that you're playing tough, but you having a messed up thumb, messed up lower back, messed up knee, messed up foot, messed up ankle. Those are all of the things that are going to
back at some point.
Yeah. You said what?
Did he have a back injury at one point?
That's why I said messed up back. Remember, the knee was messed up, which caused the back to be sore.
The back. Yeah, you're right.
And so, like, and these are all things that have done what in that time? Thrown off his shot. The one thing that he's been able to add that we have all been in favor of, and we're fine with him being here and doing, is the three-point shot. How he's improved his three ball. He's turned into one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. Well, you can't shoot the three ball at a consistent rate if you're trying to adjust for a back injury or adjust for a knee injury, or your thumb is messed up on your shooting hand. Or we saw Trae Young get booted out of the playoffs because he couldn't shoot because his thumb was messed up on his guide hand. So the injury history of Zach LaVine at this point, don't be fooled. This is a Lonzo Ball type of narrative that people didn't want to attach to a guy because he was able to play through some things, and he's an injury prone player. And so you got to try and trade a $43 million injury prone player. Don't expect a lot. And that's why I say, just like Meg Thee Stallion's cameraman, you got to zoom out here and realize that there might be a start to this season that Zach LaVine is in a Chicago Bulls jersey.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll see what that looks like. But next up, we're going to be talking about changes that happened today to the Chicago Bulls coaching staff. Not the changes that a lot of Bulls fans will want to see when they hear that, but we'll talk about that a little bit here. But before we get into that, I got a message from one of our sponsors, and that is DoorDash. Want to make mom smile? Start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brands she loves, delivered the very same day with DoorDash. Moms are a gift, so give her the best Mother's Day gifts as thoughtful as she is with DoorDash. Select from hundreds of expertly crafted bouquets to the best of tech, to the self-care essentials and more, delivered right to her door. This Mother's Day, get something thoughtful for mom on DoorDash. Surprise her from whenever you are with fresh bouquets, the largest tech gifts, self-care treats, and more to make her day that much better. Does mom have a sweet tooth? Is she a tech enthusiast, a beauty connoisseur, or is she a outdoorsy person? No matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, or whatever. Why do they keep pushing that tech gear? They really want you guys to get your mamas that tech gear. Get your mamas that tech gear. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all at one place. Get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend 15 plus on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONNBA. That's Locked On NBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms, of course, do apply. With that said, I also have a message from another one of our recent sponsors, that has Monopoly Go, which I have been playing. It's a very fun game with that. We've all been there, either as a player or as a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low. Now, you're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game and pull off some bank heists and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on the phone, anytime, with tons of twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can either work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and Google Play. Patrick, there have been changes made to Billy Donovan's staff. Mo Cheeks is out. One could say that Mo Cheeks got clapped.
Okay.
All right. He is out there as well as Chris Fleming. And with those choices, John Bryant is moving up the bench.
Wow. And once again,
I mean, in a way, Mo Cheeks got clapped. I don't know what to tell you. He's out of there. Like, how do you feel about the coaching staff changes there, Pat?
Wow. I mean, here's the funny part, right? I'm fine with Mo Cheeks being gone.
Yeah.
Because, like, maybe this is just in the podcast that I've heard with the players I've heard. Nobody ever talks good about Mo Cheeks. Why is he
Coby White? Coby White's the only one to talk positively about Mo Cheeks.
Bro, is the only player I've ever heard talk positively. Is he on the team? So is this why Mo Cheeks ended up getting clapped? Because Coby White finally got to the point where they were like, finally, we can get rid of this dude. Like, now, I do know that Casey Johnson tweeted this out earlier and talked about it a little bit in his article, that this was a Mo Cheeks decision.
Mo Cheeks decision. Much like Paxson had to go to ownership and say, I don't know how to do this anymore. Mo Cheeks had to go to Billy Donovan and say, I'm going to go ahead and head out.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I don't know what Mo Cheeks exactly was bringing to this team. Maybe he was a confident ear that Coby White could go to in some struggling times, and maybe he kept him engaged off of the bench. I'm not going to say that he brought nothing, but I know that it just seems like changes needed to be made. And hearing that Mo Cheeks was the one change that instantly came through, it was the first one. It was just like, Bulls are changing coaches. 30 seconds later, Mo Cheeks is out. That makes more sense. Yeah, okay, I can kind of see that. The Chris Fleming one was a little bit of a shock to me for the Chicago Bulls, and I think this is the part that people have to realize about a lot of these assistant coaches and guys like that. These are the guys that are talking to players the most. These are the guys that are spending the most time with these guys, working with them. Changing Chris Fleming, who was somebody who was brought in under Jim Boylan to kind of help Boylan figure out his way in the NBA, but then going to or staying on, I should say, to continue working with Billy Donovan. Changing Chris Fleming is a major change for the Chicago Bulls because he helps come up with the game plans. He helps bring in and ensure that the philosophies are being run. That is a voice that's willing to sit there and not just say, hey, Billy, whatever you want to do, we'll do. That's a voice that is supposed to be on that bench to say, hey, Billy, we need to look at things this way. And maybe the Bulls felt like they weren't getting enough of that from Chris Fleming, and why they're more willing to move on.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility there. And I think, maybe the Mo Cheeks one maybe started a domino effect. And for all we know, Chris Fleming could have wanted to get out of there too. Like Chris Fleming, keep in mind, last couple of years, Chris Fleming was on the list of the preseason voting or whatever, where coaches and GMs voted Chris Fleming as one of the assistants they thought would make the best head coach. Yeah. And Chris Fleming could very well look at the situation in Chicago and say, this ain't helping me get an NBA head coaching job at any time soon. Let me get off this sinking ship.
Well, and he's not young, right? Like I guess he's young. Like he's still got a long road ahead of him as far as a coach. But Chris Fleming's 54 years old. So at a certain point, if you feel like, hey, there's no opportunity for me to move up here, I got to kind of make my own way, possibly onto another staff, or try and go out and get some of my own head coaching jobs this season. I'm fine with him making this move. And I think Chris Fleming, I think that, at least I believed, he would have been a decent head coach here in Chicago at some point if you had ended up moving on from Billy Donovan. But I think, kind of that philosophy that I think Billy Donovan is going to move into the front office at some point here in Chicago, which would be a good reason why he wouldn't be interested in any of these college jobs, because if I know I'm going to get promoted into the front office, I'm probably going to do that.
And I feel like that's what they're setting up here, because last I think now 3 off seasons, maybe it's just the last 2. Mark Eversley is interviewed for either in a GM position, which he's a GM here now, but some teams the GM operates as a president of basketball operations, or he's interviewed for president position. So I think everybody sees the writing on the wall. Sooner rather than later, Mark Eversley is going to get a president job.
Well, I don't know anymore, right? I was very confident in that. Like first year, maybe second year here. Are we still sure he's that high on people's list, though? Like,
I mean, he was just interviewed 2 months ago, so yeah.
I mean, listen, I get it that you're getting the interviews, but like, you're not getting the jobs. You can go on all the interviews you want, but like, if they're not giving you the job, and you can keep saying, he can keep saying, we got a job that isn't finished here. No, the job's finished. Like, we know this team. The job's finished. You know what I mean? Like, there's no championships coming out of this team. So and I'm not saying that Mark Eversley's a bad GM. I'm not saying that he'd be a bad president of basketball operations. What I'm saying is I think that he was a hot name because of what the Bulls did their first year. And maybe some of that is cooled off, which is why he's remained here with the Bulls, which probably slowed down what could have been a possible succession plan for the Chicago Bulls of keeping everybody moving up and getting promoted, because Mark Eversley's still here. So you can't promote anybody else. You can't promote Chris Fleming to head coach, which hopefully doesn't come back to bite us in the butt. I'm not going to lie. I thought Chris Fleming I understand he was still running Billy's system, but I thought in those few games where you got to see him as a head coach, he showed probably the most amount of an adjustment that we've seen out of a coach in 3 years.
Oh, I mean, that is something that he did do better and quicker than Billy Donovan, is he did adjust quicker in that time. Now, let's be clear here, though. It's a little bit easier to have that adjustments than when you got Lonzo Ball guarding 3 players in one play because he was just that damn good too. So.
No, Lonzo didn't go on that trip with him, right?
Yes, he did. Lonzo played on 4 games out of that trip. He didn't finish the trip, but he played on 4 games.
Yeah, okay. I thought he was hurt on that trip, or maybe he came on later in the trip.
One of the 2, yeah.
I don't know, something like that.
Because part of that trip is the one where because that was
Golden
part
State,
of it
right?
where Lonzo averaged like 20 and 10 over like 3 games or something, and that's when everybody else is gone, and him and Derek. That's when him and the Derek Jones Jr. pick and roll became.
Yeah, that's true. No,
where did this weapon come from?
Yeah. Hey, and Chris Fleming was like, "It's working. Keep doing it." We've never seen a coach do that in our days here.
I mean, see, the thing is that we're usually on the other side of that, where teams keep going to a pick and roll, and we're just like, "What happened? We just got destroyed by a pick and roll." So.
And I'll say this to even further the point, if we're going all the way down this conspiracy theory of like they're going to put Billy in the front office, they also hired their G League coach as their lead assistant. Feel like there's some tea leaves on the wall. We better get credit for this when it finally happens. I know we're the only people saying this. Nobody else is saying this.
You know what?
Stacey King, don't you dare go on freaking.
As much as like the Javon Carter stuff and things like that we've been wrong on, we've hit on a lot of things. It seems to always happen a year after we say it, and people forget that we said it. That's all.
The two, I'd say, let's see, what's Javon Carter is a joint terrible prediction.
Yes.
My worst statement has nothing to do with the Bulls. That's the Colin Sexton one. That's probably my worst prediction.
That was probably your worst take, bro.
That's probably my worst
that was
prediction.
A pretty bad.
I said that on Locked On NBA too. Although he was hooping a little bit this season. You know what I mean? Slowly working his way back.
You got to stop it.
Slowly working his way back. Hey, listen. Sometimes you got to hold the prediction. You know what I mean? I said prediction. Calm down. I don't know. What's been your worst take on the show?
My worst take on the show, as far as like a prediction aspect, you said Javon Carter's
Javon Carter was both of us.
Was joint. Probably Marko Simonovic.
Oh yeah, that's bad.
That was a bad one. that was a bad one. I believe the hype on Marko Simonovic.
You believed in Marko, bro.
I listen, that whole first year, and then that second year, I was like, yeah.
Hey, didn't you say he'd be up by like All-Star break or something? You're like, he's got to work through some things, but he'll be up by like All-Star break.
No. That's what I said about OB. Technically, I was kind of right on that.
You were kind of right on OB.
Yeah.
They I don't know what's going on with that.
Then he got a detached eye. Now here we are.
Can he see? Yeah, let's do an ad read. I got to do the ad read, and then we can keep this thing going. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, showing love, man. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page. Before we talk about, was Coby White robbed of his most improved player? I got to tell you guys all about BetterHelp. BetterHelp is an amazing way for you to start therapy, because sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, whether it's big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let them out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. It can be a different kind of therapy for you. Most of us have bigger problems than just our favorite sports team. And it's important to get those things off your chest. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. You fill out a questionnaire. It literally finds somebody perfect for you. And the best part about it all is, if you feel like they're not perfect for you, you have the flexibility to change up your therapist to find somebody who's going to be the right person for you. All you got to do is visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. It's BetterHelp, HELP.com to get 10% off your first month. BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Also, got to tell you guys all about FanDuel. It is playoff time in the NBA, the NHL. Baseball's in full swing, at least on one side of Chicago. And FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Although, hold on. Now, I don't know if we held on to it, but I think that we might have actually beaten the Minnesota Twins which I'm always down for beating the Twins because I hate the Twins. Oh, nope, lost 6-5. Son of right now, new customers can get $150 back in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on one app in a safe, secure, and easy to use place. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Dang, dog, I just got the better help lower third. Couldn't get that FanDuel one too.
Oh,
it's crazy. Better help got promoted.
With that said, Pat, we have the most improved player of the year results in, and unfortunately, Coby White did not win. He lost to Tyrese Maxey. The total points on that, 319 to 305. This is one of the closest margins, I think, in the last decade I read as far as that voting. So Coby came close, but didn't quite get it done. I think that that last bad stretch of Coby White over like that 15 games or whatever it was, it really did kill him. If the voting was that close with that slump that Coby went through, I think if he would have finished the season stronger, he probably would have got it.
No, I agree. And it sucks to say that he doesn't get the award. And I do think that I love his reasoning for it. I don't know if you saw the article that came out about why it was so important for him to win most improved player this year. But for all the players, all of those lottery picks, all of those guys at the top of the draft that have slow starts to their career, Coby White acknowledges the fact that his career did not start off the way that most people wanted it to go for him, or that he wanted it to go for himself. But now you kind of see a young man who's able to go out there. And at a minimum, here's the thing. The award for you shouldn't be that the most improved player award. The award for you should be that you know that after next season, there is a large sum of money that will be deposited into your bank account, because the Chicago Bulls have no options except to pay you, because you are the only bright spot of hope on this team right now. And Coby White did a really, really good job improving his totals this season. Proved his points, 9.4 points per game, assists 2.3 points per game. His rebounds went up 1.6 points, or 1.6 per game. He played in 79 games this season, played through a ton of injury. I commend Coby White for everything that he did. I don't know if I can say that he got robbed, because like you said, that 15-game stretch, really post All-Star break. How many games were after the All-Star break? Like, he really didn't have a great post All-Star break.
I feel like he had a good February, or maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe that's just my memory. Let's take a look. I'm gonna pull it up.
It felt like he wasn't. He dealt with the injury right after the All-Star break, right? Where
month of February still over 20 points per game. Did that on his shooting was way down. 39% shooting from the field, 34% from 3-point range.
Yeah.
19s. And that's what's crazy. Even with March, we all know March was a struggle for Coby. Still 19 points per game in March overall as well. Had some bad shooting slump, but all double digits every game he played. And then, he had the injury there. But yeah, Coby had a solid. We know the season that Coby White had, and we know the growth. But like you said, in voting, and keep in mind, voting was done. It was sealed. We just weren't aware of it. The voting was done before the play-in even started, so they did that voting before then. But that's a lasting impression to leave on people when you come back from injury, and even before injury, you're in a slump, and you just last 3-4 games for Coby really good, but outside of that, it was just a lot of questionable shooting and slumps from Coby White to end that season. So.
No, yeah, there was just, when you talk about post All-Star break, right, and you talk about a most improved player type of player, you're thinking of somebody 16 to 18 points minimum throughout that stretch, and Coby White averaged about 19 points this season. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games sub 15-point games. And when Tyrese Maxey's putting up 30 a night almost, that's not going to get it done, right? And I think the other thing that probably helps Maxey's case is you end up seeing Joel Embiid go down in that stretch of games where post All-Star break, there's no Joel Embiid for you really to work with in a good stretch of those games, and Tyrese Maxey elevated his game. I mean, so it went from Tyrese Maxey being
it started off rough. See, they had the opposite effect because it started off rough for Maxey at first there when Embiid went down, and then he got better as it went on, and he finished really strong. So,
well, I think they had no idea that they didn't have to rely on Tobias Harris. Who dog? Like, I don't know if they at this point.
Watch. I don't clown him too much because there is a world in which Tobias Harris is a Chicago Bull next season.
Oh no, and it's a bad world. I'm gonna tell you this right now. It's a bad world. It's a bad world. Now listen, he'll be able to spot up shoot, but I mean, listen, when you look at what Tyrese Maxey was able to do post All-Star break, you're talking about him having a 50-point game in there. You're talking about a bunch of plus 30-point games. I mean, like he balled out post All-Star break and stepped his game up in a big way for the Philadelphia 76ers. And I mean, average 27 points a game, 6 assists, 3 rebounds. It's tough for me to say that Coby White got robbed. Now, if Coby, I'll say this, because of the point totals that Coby did increase, because you think Maxey realistically only increased 5 points per game.
Yeah, and that's where it is like, what do you look at? Because by the nature of the word improved, we're using that literally.
Well,
Maxey didn't improve more than Coby White.
For me, I'd say this. Maxey proved that he can be the reason that a team wins a lot down the stretch or wins more than they lose down the stretch. Right? We didn't see them kind of start to fall off until it was like, we only got Maxey. Like, I mean, Tobias down. Yeah, they started dealing with some injuries getting close to the end of the year, and then they brought Embiid back, and it was like, we got to figure out how this dude's going to be able to play these last couple of games. So I think the fact that Maxey still was able to contribute to winning, and they had, if I'm not mistaken, they were up to the 5th seed at one point with him.
I'm not even gonna act like I remember. So
I thought they got up there moderately, but
I mean, technically they had the same record as the 5th seed, so that's not surprising,
right? So I think that, you know, when you take that into account, the winning as well as the improvement versus just the point totals and stuff like that, but the Bulls are struggling to beat Washington and to beat Detroit and stuff like that. I can't say that Coby was robbed.
Yeah. I can't say robbed is too strong of a word. I do think that personally, like, I still think Coby White improved more than Tyrese Maxey, but I can't be mad at Maxey winning the award either, because it's not like he played bad. Now, Alfred, I mean, had he stayed healthy, he would have had a case too as well. So,
yeah, he's probably got the best case. I'll say this though, and this is the tough part with Coby. That there's no metric to measure it.
Mm.
Out of anybody on this list, Coby White improved the most as a leader.
This is true as well.
And that's not measurable in metrics. That's not measurable in, okay, physically we can see this. And if you're not watching the Bulls every single night, you're not going to know how this kid's leadership skills have grown this season. Coby White went from being a voiceless dude on the bench to now being like the number one dude talking on the court at all times. Like, that's a massive jump in talent. And so while he didn't win the award, I think the Bulls are in a really good situation with a young player that seems to be developing. Let's hope the development doesn't stop here. Right? Let's hope next year. Hey, listen, because if Coby White, by this metric, right, by these metrics, Coby White can win most improved player next year if he averages 25 points a game.
Which is another
5-point jump.
Yeah.
6-point jump.
We'll see.
We'll see what they do, man. Follow us on everything at Locked On Bulls. You can follow me on everything at Pat the Designer. I'll never play that ending music again until next season. That's tough. I'm not doing it for preseason or summer league games, by the way. This is a regular season thing only. And in the playoffs, we come up with something better, but we ain't never been there.
You guys can follow me at CEO Haize. And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Bulls. We are free and available on every podcasting app and platform of your choice, as well as YouTube. For Pat, I'm Haize. It's been Locked On Bulls, y'all. Peace.